Oh, hello everybody. Welcome to Sunday Night Ghost Stories Extra, because we are on a Friday. As you can hear, I am struggling a bit tonight with my voice because I don't know if I've come down with a bug or whether it's just like hay fever, but I actually couldn't speak a word yesterday. I was just a croak, which most people really enjoyed. But so yeah, here we are in the library. Derpy's outside. He's enjoying the late spring evenings. What are we reading tonight? What are we reading tonight? We are still on Scottish Ghosts, which is a pretty good book. What are we drinking tonight? More importantly, because of keeping the old throat going. This one is one of the subscription beers, El Capitan Export Stout. Dark, bold, roasty, rich. Ingredients: water, malted barley, gluten, oats, hops, yeast, allergens in bold. 7.5% volume of alcohol. And it's by the bullhousebrewco.com and at Brewhouse Brewco. Bullhouse. It doesn't say where it comes from. I think these are all English beers. So anyway, there we go. There's a nice little illustration of a dog there. In fact, I've just realized I think we will go into visual effects and I think we will blur the background out a bit. That's a little bit more atmospheric. That I like that. So what are we drinking tonight? We've drunk that, and we're also going to have the Love Lane from Home Bargains, and we've got some of the Western Gold honey, which I definitely am going to need tonight because of my rather delicate throat. So let's crack on, shall we? Poltergeists. Poltergeists are a well-documented phenomenon worldwide. Whether or not they are ghosts as such is a matter of some debate. They are not generally associated with any particular person who has gone into the hereafter. Their activities are generally short-lived, the hauntings of a poltergeist not going on indefinitely. Instead, there is generally a period of some weeks or months when activity is particularly troublesome. After this time, the poltergeist will disappear or at least cease its activities. I'm going to turn the light around a bit more. Let's get a bit more light. That's better. There have been many reported incidents. Poltergeists are closely associated with adolescents, especially troubled children. The appearance of a poltergeist will often coincide with a time of particular trauma for a teenager in the household, whether the trouble be of a serious nature or the usual adolescent angst. There have been many reported incidents of poltergeist activity throughout Scotland. Oh my goodness me. So the first one we have is 6 pages long. Oh, I could have done without that. You know what? We are just going to dive right in. We're going to start off with a beer tonight. So cheers, me beers, in the magnificent Rush beer glass. Kirsten and Steve in the States. Thank you. Let's have the bump as well. Oh, that's better. Andrew Mackie's house. Perhaps the most famous poltergeist is that which came to haunt the house of Andrew Mackie, a farmer in Ringcroft of Stocking, Kirkcudbrightshire. This story is particularly unusual because it was documented in great detail at the time by a local minister who was very much involved in the whole affair, the Reverend Andrew Telfair. His report is backed up by the testimony of several witnesses, among whom are other members of the clergy. The story dates back 300 years to the end of the 17th century when, inexplicably, the family of Andrew Mackie began to be tormented by some sort of devilish spirit. The haunting lasted for a period of some 3 months. The strange events began one night in February 1695 when Andrew Mackie went out to check on his cattle. When he got to the byre, he found all the beasts running loose. A little puzzled, he tied them up carefully before retiring for the night. Next morning, however, when he went to attend to them, he found that they had become untethered once more. The next night, the same thing happened again. Andrew tied his beasts with even extra care, only to find them let loose. How he knew not. By the next morning, Read that again. Andrew tied his beasts with even extra care, only to find them let loose. How he knew not. By the next morning. The next morning again, he found one of his cattle suspended from the roof of the cowshed by its tether. The odd happenings in the cowshed then began to be followed by disturbances in the house. One night, a basket full of peat that had been standing outside found its way into the house as the family slept. The basket was upturned and the peat was piled in a heap in the middle of the house. Somehow the peat had been set alight. Fortunately, the family was wakened by the smell of smoke and disaster was averted. There then followed a period in the month of March when the house was bombarded by stones. The stones came from no one knew where. No one seemed to be throwing them. At first, the odd small stone was seen to fly through the air outside the house. Gradually, the stones increased in size and number, hurled by some unseen force around the house, hitting the building and its occupants. The disturbances continued. Kitchen implements, furniture, and bedding were inexplicably moved, turning up in the strangest of places. On one occasion, a child of the family was alarmed to see a figure huddled in his blanket in the corner of the room, close to the fire. When someone had plucked up the courage to investigate and pulled the blanket back, it was found that it was not a person under the cover, but an upturned stool. The flying stones became bigger and better in their aim. The members of the family were being knocked and bruised by them, and neighbours coming to call were similarly assaulted. The house was continually disrupted by bangs, knockings, furniture moving, and doors slamming. Over time, the family observed that the activities of this strange spirit, if spirit it was, were more frantic on Sundays or at times when the members of the family were praying together. As the trouble escalated, the family called in Reverend Telfair. He led the family in prayers, but as soon as he left the house, the stone throwing resumed. Things calmed down in the following few days, but the next Sabbath saw an increase in the stone throwing. Reverend Telfair offered to spend the night with the family. The spirit rewarded his efforts with more frantic activity. Telfair himself was struck by stones and a stick. Furniture made strange noises. Objects flew at people across the room. As Telfair knelt in prayer, he felt something on his arm and looked down. As Telfair knelt in prayer, he felt something on his arm and, looking down, saw a ghostly white hand at his wrist. In the following days, the spirit continued to vent its anger. People were hurled across rooms in the house, scratched and had hair pulled and were beaten with sticks. The stone throwing continued relentlessly. The children had their covers torn off them as they lay in their beds. They were beaten about the hips by an invisible hand. The spirit began to make itself heard. As the family were praying, they heard a voice saying, "Whist, whist." Need a drink. Oh, lovely. Sludge. Oh, that's better. The torment continued unabated until April, and the bravery and tenacity of the family must have been considerable, for they remained in the house in spite of it all. In April, Telfair sought the assistance of his fellow clergy, and two ministers, Andrew Ewart and John Murdo from Kells and Crossmichael, respectively, joined the Mackie family in prayer one night. The ministers suffered considerable pains for their efforts. Huge stones were flung at them both, and they were beaten with sticks. The whole house was in more turmoil than ever. Fires began to break out. One day, Andrew Mackie's wife was stepping into the yard when she noticed that a stone slab in the doorway was loose. She lifted the slab and found some bones and bloody flesh underneath, wrapped in cloth. She took the bones to the house. She took the bones from the house to the landlord's house, quite some distance away, thinking that the trouble might in some way be associated with the bones. In her absence, the trouble in the house only increased. The children found burning hot stones in their beds. Fireballs flew around. The stone throwing was worse than ever. Mrs. Mackie returned the bones to the house. The Reverend Telfair prayed over the bones and was beaten severely with a stick. And so it went on. Then something happened that made all concerned wonder whether there was something in the house's past to cause these spiritual disturbances. One day, Andrew Mackie found a note written in blood, or so it appeared, close to his house. 3 years thou shalt have to repent and net it well, the note read. Woe be to thee, Scotland, repent, and tack warning, for the doors of heaven are already barred against thee. I am sent for a warning to thee to flee to God, yet troubled shall this man be for 20 days. Repent, 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 Scotland, or else thou shalt. Was there a connection between the bones and the message? Had there been a murder in the house? The house was not old. It had been built only 28 years before. An investigation into the past history of the building ought not to be difficult. Accordingly, all previous occupants were brought before a committee consisting of Andrew Telfair, the landlord, Charles McClellan, and others. They were all asked to touch the bones. Nothing untoward occurred, so the committee sent the bones to Kirkcudbright for examination by an assembly of ministers. 5 ministers were then dispatched to Andrew Mackie's house to pray. The spirit, angered as ever by religious intrusion, flew into a fury. Stones broke through the roof of the house and the whole building seemed to shake. Telfair details some of the activities as follows. It brake down the barn door and mid-wall and threw stones up at the house. It did no great hurt. It gripped and handled the legs of some as with a man's hand. It hoisted up the feet of others while standing on the ground. Thus it did to William Lennox of Mill House, myself, and others. In this matter, it continued till 10 o'clock at night. The ministers persisted for 3 days, but the spirit would not give in to their prayers. Other people from the district joined in the effort. At one point, a neighbour appeared with his dog. The dog had killed a polecat on the way to the Mackie's house, and the visitor threw the dead creature in the corner of the room before joining in the prayers. 3 more people arrived and were very distressed when the spirit picked up the dead animal and beat them about the heads and bodies with its carcass. One of the visitors felt something like a hand inside his clothes and pockets, and became so distraught that he was sick. Goodness me, how many more pages? The following Sabbath brought even more upset. The spirit whispered and whistled and cried out at the family in prayer. The family and friends and neighbors were injured with stones and sticks. Praying men were lifted off their knees by an unseen force. Period of bump time, I think. No, we'll wait to get to the bottom. 2 days later, on the 16th of April, the Mackey family had had enough. They decided to move out of the house for a while. 5 of their neighbors volunteered to stay in the house in the Mackeys' absence. Strangely, the trouble in the house stopped, and the guests were not bothered by the spirit at all. Outside, however, the cattle were found to have broken loose from their tethers, and some appeared to have been disturbed. Thinking things might be improving, some members of the family moved back in after a couple of days. They spent one peaceful night, but in the morning found that the sheep had been tied together in pairs by tethers fashioned from straw that had been taken from the stable. After 2 reasonably quiet days, the spirit started again with a vengeance. The beating and stone throwing began again, and lumps of peat were thrown along with stones. The spirit whistled and called out, "Take you that!" as it beat its victims. All present continued with their prayers, but the harder they prayed, the more they suffered. Andrew Mackey was snatching a few hours of sleep when he was woken by the voice of the spirit. "Thou shalt be troubled till Tuesday," it said. Mackey decided to try to talk to the spirit. Slange. Oh, you good health. "Who gave thee a commission?" he asked. "God gave me a commission," was the reply, "and I am sent to warn the land to repent. For a judgment is to come if the land do not quickly repent, and I will return 100 times worse upon every family in the land. Praise me, and I will whistle to you. Worship me, and I will trouble you no more." Mackey prayed for deliverance from Satan. The spirit's reaction was contemptuous. "You might as well have said Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. Several people heard the conversation between Andrew Mackey and the spirit. One of the company attempted to intervene, but the spirit would not countenance this, dismissing the man for meddling in other people's business. When the spirit became silent once more, all the beer burps. There we go. 19 minutes and 53 seconds. That's quite early tonight. When the spirit became silent once more, the family was no further forward. The next day, there were 7 fires around the house started by the spirit, and the family and neighbors were kept hard at work all day, extinguishing them. The spirit appeared to be frustrated at the success of their efforts and began to tear down one of the house walls. The family was forced to take refuge in a barn. As they tried to get some rest, the spirit raised a great block of wood in the air above the heads of the children. "If I had a commission, I would brain them," it cried angrily. The fire raising and the exhausting task of keeping the fires under control continued all the following day. Mackey was in the barn when the spirit spoke to him again. "Andrew, Andrew!" Mackey tried to ignore the voice. "Speak!" commanded the spirit. Andrew would not speak. The spirit spoke again in a calmer tone. "Be not troubled. You shall have no more trouble, except some casting of stones upon Tuesday to fulfill the promise." Telfair, McClellan, and some others joined the family late that night in the house and stayed there for some hours. Apart from some stone throwing, all was quiet. On Tuesday, the day upon which the spirit had said it would stop its troubles, the Mackey family and others gathered in the barn to pray. Mackey was the first to catch sight of a black thing in the corner of the building. The thing grew, and it seemed as if it might fill the whole barn with its presence. It was like a huge black storm cloud. Chaff and mud flew out of the cloud at a terrified, chaff and mud flew out of the cloud at the terrified onlookers, who then felt themselves being gripped painfully hard around the arms and bodies by the blackness itself. Then the blackness subsided. Everything returned to normal. A quiet night followed. On the last Wednesday, 1st of May, there was one final fire. A sheep house was destroyed, but neither people nor animals were hurt in any way. The disturbances at Ringcroft of Stocking were finally over, and no one was the wiser as to what had caused them. There were some theories as to what might have triggered the trouble. Reverend Telfair put 3 of these forward in his account of the happenings. Some years before, the house was occupied by the Mackey family. It was the home of a man called McNaught. McNaught was a miserable soul, desperately poor and in frail health. He wondered if some evil force might have taken ill against him. He had sent his son to ask the advice of a spaewife or fortune teller some distance away. His son had gone to see the woman, but had met some soldiers on his way home, His son had gone to see the woman, but had met some soldiers on his way home, enlisted, and gone abroad. He finally sent a message back to Ringcroft relating the spaewife's advice. Under a slab at the threshold of the house could be found a tooth. When the tooth was removed and burnt, good fortune would return to the house. The message got back to Ringcroft too late, however, for Mr. McNaught was dead. The new tenant of the house, a man called Thomas Telfair, no relation to Reverend Telfair, heard of the spaewife's words, lifted the stone, found a tooth, and burned it. He had had no trouble whilst in the house. Perhaps McNaughty's misery, Telfair's trouble-free tenancy, and Andrew Mackey's troubles were somehow linked. A second theory concerned the death of a woman of ill repute, whose belongings had been left in the house after she died. Perhaps the Mackeys had taken the things for themselves. Mackey denied this strongly, saying, again, I think I'll have a beer. Slange. You coming up, Derpy? Because you're sat on the floor there glaring at me. Come on. A second theory concerned the death of a woman of ill repute whose belongings had been left in the house after she died. Perhaps the Mackeys had taken the things for themselves. Mackey denied this strongly, saying that the woman's things, carefully tied in a bundle, had been returned to her nearest and dearest intact. A third theory was dismissed outright by Telfair, who knew Andrew Mackey to be a good, God-fearing citizen. The theory was that Mackey, when he became a Mason, had dedicated his first child to the devil. These strange occurrences have sparked off many a lively debate in the years that have followed, but no one has come any closer to finding out what it was that tormented the family of Andrew Mackey for 3 terrible months in 1695. Why it caused so much trouble is just as much of a mystery and will no doubt remain so. 26 minutes. Goodness me, that was a marathon reading, that was. You're coming up, Derpy. Come on. Come on. I don't like you sitting there glaring at me like that. It's quite unnerving, especially when you're reading ghost stories. Cheers, me beers. Oh, that's quite strong beer. Slange. Oh, does do the throat good. The Devil of Glenluce. 40 years before the astonishing catalogue of events at Ringford of Stocking, the household of Gilbert Campbell, a weaver in Glenluce, was disrupted by a similar presence. This story is more typical of poltergeist activity than that of Andrew Mackie's house, in that the spirit appeared to be closely connected to the children in the family, in particular to Campbell's son, a young student at Glasgow University. The first indication of trouble to come was given when Campbell's daughter, Jeanette, began to complain of strange noises in her ears. The noises were shrill, like whistling. Then Jeanette was heard to utter the words of some unseen spirit. "I'll cast thee, Jeanette, into the well." After that, the house was subjected to continual bombardment with stones. Clothing was hurled from drawers. Clothes were ripped to shreds. Sleepers were woken as the bedclothes were dragged off them by an invisible force. Much alarmed, Campbell moved his children out of the house for their own safety. The disturbances ceased as soon as the children had gone. The children moved back into the house with the exception of the eldest son, who was studying in Glasgow. For a while, things were quiet, but then Campbell's son returned to the house and the troubles started again with renewed vigour. Stones were hurled around, belongings were damaged, and at one point, the house caught fire. The affair caught the attention of the church, and various attempts were made by ministers to exorcise the spirit. The spirit was apparently quite communicative and claimed to have Campbell's son in its power. It claimed to have been sent by Satan from hell to torment the occupants of the house. While the spirit was willing to communicate with the religious men, it was nevertheless resistant to all their attempts to banish it from the house. It continued to torment the family, beating the children as they lay in their beds, starting fires around the house, hiding the family's belongings, or hurling them through the air. The family showed remarkable courage, remaining in the house throughout all this. Then, without warning, the activities of the malevolent force stopped, and the family was left in peace. Although no one could be certain as to the cause of the fearful disturbances, one theory connects them to a beggar who had turned up at Campbell's house some time previously. Campbell had sent him away without giving him a penny, and the beggar had angrily threatened to avenge this cold-hearted treatment. It was said that the man was a certain Alexander Agnew, who was eventually accused of crimes against the church and was hanged some miles away in Dumfries. His death apparently coincided with the sudden return to harmony at Campbell's house at Glenluce. Glenluce or Glenlucy? Do you know what? I'm going to ask one of my Scots friends I'm going to ask him right now. I'll get this right. So watching on Friday night. I tuned in to watch Sunday Night Ghost Stories Extra, but as usual, he was faffing around with his social media. All the beer burps again. Right, so viewer David, because he's from that there Scotland, so is that Glenn Luce or Ghost Stories Enquiry? What are we up to? We've gone through the half-hour mark. Goodness me. Which is just as well, because we just finished that chapter. No, we haven't finished that chapter. We've got one more to go. But we'll have... It's half-time, so... Slange me var. Oh, delicious. Cheers, me beers. We have got some little wasabi mix rice snacks. I have my good friend Faye to blame for these because she got me into them. Oh, let's open them up. So what have we been up to today? We've done some allotment work. My good friend Laura, we dug over her allotment and we put in some onions and some shallots on top of the potatoes we already planted. Wow, actually, I'll show you this. Actually, let's just go. Bear with, folks. I'm social mediaing here. Yeah, so what did I do today? I did do some planters today. Let me just find my planters. Right. So let's just plug the iPhone back in. So on top of planting some potatoes today, when I came back this evening rather, I did some planters out front. I've had them for about a year. They're like tiered planters that I got from Lidl for about, I think they're about £6 or something. They were cheap. Let's put it that way. A bit like me, they were cheap. So here we go. So share screen. So here we go. The bottom are some field forget-me-nots that I rescued from Laura's allotment and some sedum that I've got growing in the back garden. Then in the middle tier are some geraniums and other bits and pieces. And then the top tier, I think there are some pansies and some other bits and pieces. I forget what they were. And that's the other planter on the other side of the front door. Again, sedums and field forget-me-nots at the bottom, geraniums in the middle, and pansies up top. And also some alyssum as well, alyssum rather. So hopefully that'll add let's add it to the page. There we go. So there is one of the planters by the front door, by the porch, he said grandly. Yeah, so there we are. Field forget-me-nots and sedums at the bottom, geraniums and other bits and pieces in the middle, and then pansies up top, and the same on that side. So we will give them a good water. We did that tonight, but hopefully they will prove to be productive. So yeah, it was work on friend Laura's allotment today, which was great fun. We got her onions in. Oh my goodness me, wasabi snacks. Them's hot. It's time to move on. Oh, lovely. Cheers. Right, the next drink for tonight is another one from Home Bargains. It's the Lovelace Brewery Blackbird Extra Stout, 6.7%. Goodness me, what was the other one? Was that 6.5? 7.5. Oh my goodness me. So actually we're on a slightly weaker beer now. I'll read you the blurb of this in a second. This is Love Lane Brewery. I cannot. Blackbird Extra Stout, 6.7%. Brewed under the watchful eyes of the liver birds. Roasted barley, flaked oats, and a selection of dark malts are combined to create a robust dark stout with notes of coffee, rich toffee, and chocolate, finished with a lingering tannic bitterness. A special release from Love Lane. Extra stout ale. Ingredients: water, malted barley, oats, wheat, hops, yeast. For allergens, including cereals containing gluten. See ingredients in bold. Served chilled. I'm quite chilled at the moment. 6.7% from the Love Lane Brewery. Oh, the beer burps again. 62 to 64 Bridgewater Street. So Bridgewater is literally just outside the window there, about 30 miles down the M5. Although this Bridgewater has an E and ours doesn't. Bridgewater Street, Baltic Triangle, Liverpool. I'm not going to complain about that because I'm a Liverpool fan, so I am definitely going to be buying more of this because it's as cheap as chips in Home Bargains, which is one of my favorite stores locally. Brilliant for everything, quite frankly. Cat food, bird food, plants, general stuff. Love it. Absolutely love it. Let's have some more wasabi mix, shall we? So that's been it, really. A little bit of work on the allotment today. Got back here, did my flower pots, which we've just seen. Derpy is outside. He's decided at the moment in his dotage to go walkabout. I don't get that. The other night he was down the end of the garden. I could hear him going meow meow, and he was in somebody else's garden. It was just like, do it in our garden for goodness sake. Anyway, and we've also got hedgehogs. How can I describe them? Barging hedgehogs, humping hedgehogs. Quite a lot of hedgehog action at the moment, so that's quite good. So we've got the trail cam outside working on that. I think that's it. That's it for this part of half time. I think we'll crack on with part 2 of the show, because then I can go downstairs and have some supper, fall asleep in front of the television watching Family Guy, but also just have something for my throat because it's a little bit sore at the moment. So cheers, me beard. Oh. Do you know what? I've suddenly realised, goodness me, how remiss of me. Earlier on, we finished the ball house, but what we didn't do was we didn't run VT. So I apologise and run VT.
Oh, it's jolly nice of you. Hello, dead soldier. Seen plenty of those in my time.
Goodness me. And Derpy's just come in. And as she's come in, look, the Love Lane, we have finished that and run VT.
Oh, it's jolly nice of you. Hello, dead soldier. Seen plenty of those in my time.
Great film. Right. The Poltergeist of Sorky. A much more recent case of poltergeist activity was that which concerned a young girl called Virginia Campbell, who lived in the village of Sorky in Clackmannanshire. The story caused quite a sensation in 1960 to 61. Don't look at me, I was born 67. The child had moved to Scotland from Ireland with her parents, and by all appearances was a normal, bright little girl. The move to Scotland might have been more traumatic for Virginia than people around her had realised. Perhaps this, along with the fact that she was at a vulnerable age, she was 11 at the time, accounted for the strange occurrences that took place when she was around. The strange events started in the child's home. Unexplained knocking noises were heard when she was around, and objects, even surprisingly heavy ones, were seen to move. The child herself was very distressed by what was happening. Her mother kept her home from school and called the doctor, who prescribed tranquilizers. Virginia seemed calmer, but the strange things went on happening. The doctor had some idea that what they were witnessing might be poltergeist activity. In order to try to eliminate this possibility, Virginia was sent to stay the night with relatives, but the strange events went with her. She was clearly the focus of some sort of paranormal activity. After a couple of weeks, things began to calm down, and it was decided that she should return to school. Virginia's mother told teachers at the school that odd things were happening at home. Objects were moving, some were flying through the air. Objects were moving, some were flying through the air. It seemed too strange to be true. But the initial skepticism on the part of the teachers soon disappeared when similar things began to happen around Virginia at school. Her desk rose inches from the floor. Other children in her class noticed objects moving from place to place. Once, a door refused to shut behind her. Heavy furniture could be seen to move. Although the activities were less violent in nature than had been witnessed in Virginia's home, they were still happening. Over the next few months, it became more and more difficult to safeguard the child from the morbid interest of the press. The stories that were circulated were sometimes only tenuously linked to the facts. Surprisingly, the other children in the school were much less hysterical than outsiders in their reactions to events. They became quite matter of fact about the situation. When Virginia was around, sometimes things moved. Simple as that. These strange happenings became less and less frequent over time, and after a few months, they had stopped altogether. Bum, bum, bum. That's Poltergeist for you. That's about 3 stories. Very nice. Lovely. Sound. Oh. A haunted capital. Edinburgh is a beautiful city. Of that, there can be no doubt. Dubbed the Athens of the North because of the number of classical style buildings it boasts in its graceful Georgian new town. It also has a proud and ancient castle and a stunning palace that is still a royal residence. Clustered round the Royal Mile, the street that stretches downhill west to east from Edinburgh Castle to the Palace of Holyrood House, are the remains of the old town, higgledy-piggledy tenements and closes, along with the Canongate, the Grassmarket, and the West Bow, all steeped in history and, so we are told, heavily populated by ghostly presences. Edinburgh has seen it all in its time: conflict and siege, plague and fire, murder, intrigue, and witchcraft. Seedy and gruesome characters from the past provide a wealth of material for tourist guides. And we're not talking about Reform MPs. It must be a joy to have stories about body snatchers, witch trials, and particularly cruel executions to relate to your audience as you stroll the streets of the city with a crowd of visitors. There is enough to tell based on historical fact alone to keep an audience spellbound, but wise tourist guides will know their ghosts as well. There are plenty of them. After all, and their stories add to the thrill of the place. Visitors to Edinburgh can now choose to scare themselves silly on guided tours that specifically concentrate on the horrors of the past and the ghouls that are said to lurk in their wake. Time for a beer. Oh, fan mail's turning up. Slange me bar. Ghosts can make good money for the entrepreneur, but their manifestations were first recorded long ago before ghost tours were even thought of, and some of the stories have been passed down through several generations. How did the stories start? Do the ghosts exist? It is left to the individual to decide, for neither the skeptic nor the believer can prove to each other unequivocally whether or not the ghosts do exist. Edinburgh's ghosts are not all ancient. Things continue to happen in places in and around the town that cannot be explained. The catalogue of reports of supernatural phenomena continues to grow. What is it all about? Is it all hysteria, sensationalism, superstitious nonsense? Is there a rational explanation for everything? The debate will probably never reach a conclusion. Meanwhile, stories of Edinburgh's ghosts will continue to keep children from sleeping soundly and make people stop in their tracks on dark nights in dim cobbled streets. Is there anybody there? We got a bit of Pink Floyd there. Oh, we got some fan mail. We'll have a wasabi snack, have a swig of beer, and then we'll read the fan mail. I did ask viewer David in Scotland how you pronounce Glen Luce. Is it Glen Luce or is it Glen Lucy? He just responded with a cut and paste of the actual name, so I'm not any the wiser. Glen Luce. So viewer David says Glen Luce. God bless you, viewer David. Thank you. Glen Luce, apparently. Strange. At the 55-minute mark, so Slange. Ann Street, the return of Mr. Swan. Ann Street is a particularly beautiful and desirable place to live in the heart of Georgian Edinburgh. At the end of the 19th century, one of the houses in the street was home to the Swan family. An uncle of the family was a great traveller, and the family was used to receiving letters from far-flung places describing his latest exploits. The traveller would take off for months at a time, but would always keep in touch by mail and would appear from time to time, sometimes without warning, to draw breath between his adventures. One evening, the family was particularly surprised to see Mr. Swan appear in their midst. They had expected him to be far away at sea, but they were delighted all the same. They rose to greet him as he strolled in through the front door, but before they had time to make him welcome, Mr. Swan merely smiled at them, waved, and disappeared. It was the oddest thing. The family was left to ponder the strange occurrence for some weeks until news finally reached them that Mr. Swan had drowned when the ship in which he had been travelling to some distant place had sunk. The time of his death coincided with his mysterious appearance in the family home. His visit had apparently been a wish to keep in touch with his nearest and dearest in death, just as he had in life. Mr. Swan still returns to his old family home in Ann Street. Far from being a malevolent figure, it is said that he is very much a friendly ghost, popping in to say hello. We're coming up to the hour mark. Goodness me. I think we'll have some snacks. You're coming up, Debs. Come on. Your audience demands you. Come on. Strange. Derpy is deaf as a post. You're coming up. Come on. Come on. You are holding up the Ghost Stories show here. Right. Here we go. 1, 2, 3. There we are. His derpy lurpiness has joined us in all his bony glory. Oh, lovely. Right, Derps. Charlotte Square, a ghostly piano. Charlotte Square in the West End of the city is a busy place and is for the most part taken up with offices. But in amongst the hustle and bustle of city life, through the continual noise of the passing traffic, another sound can sometimes be heard, that of ghostly piano playing. This will be it for tonight, Derbs. What are we up to? We've just gone through the hour mark, so cheers, my beers. Oh, goodness me, we've almost run out of bump here. In the magnificent United Federation of Planet Shot Glass, again, courtesy of viewers Kirsten and Steve in the United States, Slange Mivar. We're going to have a bit more of that, Debs. Corstorphine, the haunted sycamore tree. Nothing remains of Corstorphine Castle, apart from the ancient dovecot that stands near the east end of Dovecot Road in Corstorphine, a suburb on the northwest side of Edinburgh. The castle was destroyed in the 18th century. Beside the dovecot once stood an old, gnarled sycamore tree, the last of an avenue of trees that led westwards towards the castle. The tree, diseased and fragile, was carefully preserved as a well-loved historical landmark by the Corstorphine Trust until it finally gave way during a storm on the night of the 26th of December 1998. The trunk snapped in two, leaving nothing standing but a jagged stump. The story of the Corstorphine sycamore and the white lady who haunts it is familiar to all in the district, young and old alike. In the 17th century, when the castle of Corstorphine was still standing, it was inhabited by the Forrester family, who owned most of the land in the surrounding area. The laird at the time, one James Forrester, was a charismatic man whose overindulgence in alcohol and whose liking for a pretty face and curving figure were well known, but on the whole, forgiven on account of his great charm. Oh, the beer burps. I do apologise. Laird James became embroiled in a passionate affair with a married woman, Christian Nimmo. The lovers were forced to meet in secret, which must have added both a great deal of excitement and a certain amount of tension to the liaison. Try it again. The lovers were forced to meet in secret, which must have added both a great deal of excitement and a certain amount of tension to the liaison. One such meeting in the shadows of the dovecot beside the sycamore tree was destined to be their final. It began with a passionate embrace and ended in a murder. When Christian Nimmo arrived at their appointed meeting place, Sir James was not there, but Christian knew his habits all too well and sent one of her servants to the Black Bull Inn nearby to seek him out. The laird was found in the inn as anticipated, and he finally came to meet her by the sycamore tree. He had been drinking heavily, and Christian Nimmo, angered by his inconsiderate and objectionable behaviour, began to quarrel with him. The dispute swiftly took on frightening proportions until suddenly, seized by a fit of uncontrollable rage, the lady pulled her lover's sword from its scabbard by his side and plunged it into him. She escaped from justice initially, but was eventually hunted down and taken to meet her end at the hands of the executioner. Her ghost, dressed in white, haunts the area around the dovecot still, the bloody sword in her hand giving evidence of the dreadful consequences of her temper. Do you know what, derps? I think more tonight, and that'll be it. That'll be us downstairs having some supper and watching Family Guy. So cheers, me bears. Sludge. Dowry, the one-armed ghost of John Chisley, or Cheesley. The ghostly figure was known as Johnny One Arm to the people around Dowry in Edinburgh. He haunted the streets of the area, scaring grown-ups and children alike for more than 300 years. John Cheesley lived in the middle of the 16th century, an unhappily married man until he finally sought a divorce from his wife in 1688. He then became an unhappily divorced man. The Lord President of the Court of Session, Sir George Lockhart, had pronounced that John Cheesley should pay his wife a substantial sum annually in settlement, feeling the sum awarded to be entirely unreasonable, being out of all proportion both to his wife's needs and his own means. John Cheesley decided to vent his anger upon Sir George. He followed him to church one Sunday morning and, catching up with him in Old Bank Close, he shot him. Sir George died, and the full weight of the law descended upon John Cheesley. He was tortured cruelly to establish whether he had acted alone or with the help of others. Then his right arm was cut off while he was still alive as fitting punishment for its part in the crime. His right hand had held the murder weapon. Finally, John Cheesley was taken to the gallows and hanged. His body was left hanging on the gallows as an example and a gruesome warning to all. Then someone, nobody knows who, took the body down and secreted it away. Had it been buried? Nobody could or would tell. Ghostly happenings began to be reported in Dowry. Several people reported seeing the anguished figure of a man in the streets around the area. The ghost had one arm missing. It screamed. It laughed maniacally. It gave the neighboring children nightmares. The ghost appeared again and again over the next 300 years. In 1965, builders began work on a cottage in Dowry. On removing part of the floor, they were surprised to find the skeleton of a man. The skeleton was cracked and broken, as one would expect the skeleton of a tortured man to be. Most significantly, however, the skeleton had only one hand. It could only be John Cheesley. The remains were removed from the house and reinterred in another place. The streets of Dowry are at peace now, for Johnny One Arm no longer has cause to haunt them. We were going to end there, but we'll do one more. Derpy is insisting on it, so sludge. Last for tonight, Edinburgh Castle Phantom Musicians. Edinburgh Castle has seen more than its fair share of drama and tragedy over the centuries. No doubt there are more ghostly tales to be told about the fortress that stands so proudly on the rock above the city. But the two most famous stories concern a phantom piper and a sometimes headless drummer. Both are fitting tales to tell about Edinburgh Castle. The sound of pipes and drums is inextricably linked with the castle in modern times, for it is the venue of the world famous Edinburgh military tattoo, in which massed bands try again. Both are fitting tales to tell about Edinburgh Castle. The sound of pipes and drums is inexplicably linked with the castle in modern times, for it is the venue of the world famous Edinburgh military tattoo, in which mass bands from regiments all over the world thrill audiences of several hundred a night for 3 weeks every year. And that's it for tonight. What are we up to? 1 hour and 12 minutes, 13 minutes. Oh my goodness me, Debs. Sludge. Oh, cheers me dears. Cheers me beers. Oh, delicious. Update. There he is, perched on my lap. There he is. Right, that's it for tonight, folks. We are going downstairs and having some supper. Oops, daisy. And actually, we're going to have a couple of more wasabi mix. So, fingers crossed. We'll be back on Sunday for Brace Yourselves, Sunday Night Ghost Stories on a Sunday as nature intended. Until then, it behoves me to say thank you for watching. Why? Why not? What else are you going to do on a May evening, on a Friday, than watch a confused man from Dudley with holes in his head, drink ghost stories, and read alcohol? Come on, folks. You can do better. I can't. I'm trapped in this tragic experience. Anyway, until Sunday, as ever, thank you for watching. Stay safe. Stay out of trouble. Please don't have nightmares. Good night.